And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Decollage. Look at this! Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? We don't need any more of these.
Welcome in, everybody, to another Falcon 9 launch from the beautiful Space Coast and Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. You're looking at a Falcon 9 carrying the SXM-9 satellite for SiriusXM radio. And I am your host today, Gene Rowley for NSF, joined by a crew of amazing people for this launch. And we see, thanks for all the 5x5s in the chat. It's amazing to see all of you guys here. Joining us today, snuck into a roadside where to launch where to watch a launch in Florida is the one and only Julia Bergeron. Julie, how are you doing today?
I am fabulous. Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Gene. It is a beautiful day out here on the Space Coast. The sun is shining, the clouds are thin, and I'm ready for a launch.
And where are you exactly? Because a lot of people want to say, where do I go to watch a launch in Florida? So you've kind of just pulled over at an amazing spot, right?
I did. I'm kind of in the middle of Titusville, empty plot of land near Titus Landing Mall. So just out here to prove to you that it is possible to pretty much watch a launch from anywhere.
And if you want more information on where you can watch that launch, we do have a video on NSF of where to watch a launch in Florida. Also joining us today for commentary to talk about this beautiful rocket that we're hopefully going to see launch here in a little bit is the one and only Trevor Sesnick. Trevor, good morning.
Good morning. I'm certainly excited for yet another Falcon launch, especially from 39A. It's not quite as common that we see them from this historic pad, but some exciting stuff to talk about on today's mission for sure.
And some of the camera views that you're going to see today from our folks in the field, obviously we've got DY's camera, Max's camera, and Wade is out there somewhere with a camera. And we're going to be able to see the shots from those guys in the field today as we go for this SiriusXM Falcon 9 launch. Now, this is booster 1076. It's flown 19 times, right, Julia?
Indeed, it has. Today we are looking at booster 1076, and it began its career of flight on the CRS-26 mission back in November of 2022. It has also flown OneWeb 16, Intelsat 40, O3B mPOWER, Avzon 3, Eutelsat 36D, Türksat 6A, WorldView, Legion 3 and 4, and we've got 10 Starlink missions. What's interesting about that is that this is a Group 6 Rockstar booster. It has flown all but one of its missions for Starlink in the Group 6 category of Starlink satellites. So that's kind of cool. And of course, not every launch is, just a Starlink. There's always something unique about it. And that's one of my unique facts, besides the fact that this is the second fastest turnaround of a booster at 21 days.
That's fast. And just, what was it, last week? They set a new record. And if they hadn't have done that one, this one would have been the record setter by a few hours. This one is going straight east. Booster 1076 is going straight east. And it is going to, if successfully launches and then separates, the booster will land on Just Read the Instructions. And Bob will recover those fairings. And this payload going up. It's a lot of us listen to SiriusXM radio, so it's when you think about those satellites, how do they get up there? This is how they get up there, right? This thing weighs 7 metric tons. Is that right? 7 metric tons. TONNES. That's metric for all
Yeah.
of my American friends watching, right, Trevor?
Yeah, it's about 7,000 kilogram launch mass, which is high given, right? This is going to geostationary transfer orbit. So will be very interesting to see what exact GTO velocity they hit, since the way that these transfer orbits are measured is you'll generally see a geo minus number. So, like, let's say geo minus 1100. And that will mean that the satellite needs to have 1100 meters per second of delta V to reach its slot in geo from where it's put into geostationary transfer orbit. So I suspect we'll probably be like geo minus 1700 is about where missions like this have been in the past. But will be very interesting to see once we get the telemetry from the initial orbit.
This has been an interesting week in spaceflight news, and we're going to get to some of that. I know some folks are already talking about it in the chat. Thank you guys for all the questions and, of course, all your support. We appreciate it. Trevor, we do see some venting from the strong back there. What's going on with that vent?
Yeah, so this is just standard venting around the pad. It does not mean anything when it comes to fueling. The only indications that mean anything for the launch time are vents that happen after that T minus 35-minute mark. So this is just like how we see at Starbase every now and then, a vent here, a vent there. Right, this is an active tank farm that they are chilling down for fuel prop load, which, if all goes well, will begin in about 15 minutes. But this is not any indication of an exact T0 or anything. That does not happen until they've entered that launch auto sequence, which again, they pull for that at T minus 38 minutes, and then the prop load starts at T minus 35 minutes.
So we should see a lot more venting when we get closer to that T0. RC Horseman, thank you so much for those 10 gifted NASA Spaceflight.com memberships. We appreciate you. And we also appreciate all your questions that come in. And again, we did talk about, I mentioned a little bit, this has been an interesting week in spaceflight. And we're going to get some varying opinions on some of the things that we're going to talk about today as we wait for this Falcon 9 to fuel up and launch. I did want to get to one of the questions early on about the number of launches. Right now, Falcon 9 is rated for, I think that, they wanted to go for 40 launches. Is that right, Trevor?
Yeah.
They wanted to go for 40. And Julie, I'll bring you in on this one as well. Trevor, I'll ask you first. Do you expect that we'll ever see a triple-digit launch? A triple-digit booster, rather. Sorry, triple digits within the 2030s. And that question comes from, and I'm going to not say this name right, Trigivskaran. That's my swing at it. Do you think that'll ever get to 100? Because I know Elon said that the goal was 100 launches out of a booster.
Yeah, so right, what they originally said was that they were going to have basically every 10 launches, they were going to do major refurbishment to the booster. And then, right, the tanks essentially have infinite life according to SpaceX. So they asserted that they're probably good with major refurbishment. But we've seen them blow right past that 10 mark. Right, this booster is flying for its 19th time. Yesterday, we had a launch where the booster flew for its 24th time, and this is without any major refurbishment. So they definitely have surpassed that engineering requirement that they set out with Block 5, which is fantastic. That said, I personally don't think we're going to see any Falcons reach that triple digits. Right, we've seen this year that they seem to have these landing anomalies right now every couple hundred flights, which would make it pretty hard for a booster to reach 100 flights. Additionally, I just don't really see Falcon ever getting to the point of flying enough that a single booster needs to be flown 100 times. I think that's not something we're going to see until Starship with Super Heavy, and I absolutely think that we're going to have Super Heavies that fly hundreds and eventually even thousands of times.
Thousands of times. Julia, what do you think? Do you think we'll get to triple digits on a Falcon 9?
I mean, don't get me wrong, it would be cool if we did, but I think with our current fleet, even at the cadence we have, I don't think we're going to reach 100, at least on a single Falcon 9 stick. Just because Starship, that's going to be a thing here on the Space Coast really soon, and Starship can send up a lot of Starlink satellites. So, yes, Falcon 9 is the workhorse, but I don't think they're going to make it that long. And then you also have to factor in things like weather and drone ships, and some missions are actually expendable. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't think we're
Yeah.
going to get there. I mean, it was a great idea, and I think Falcon 9 possibly is capable of that. I say possibly because there are a lot of stresses on it in flight and just coming back on a drone ship. That's not a easy ride home. So
Well,
yeah.
as of this launch, Falcon 9 has had 406 orbital flights. And I agree with both of you. I think that Starship will eventually phase out the Falcon 9 simply from a mass to orbit cost perspective. In the launch market, it would be great to see a Falcon 9 hit 100, 110, what have you, and we can all say yay, and then Starship will launch, 9 Falcon 9s worth of payload in one launch, and then we'll understand why they're phasing it out. So let's get back to some of the news that hit this week, and I'm sure if you're a spaceflight enthusiast like us, because we're the same, we're all nerds here, we want to see this rocket fly. You heard some interesting news about the incoming U.S. administration. The president-elect has nominated Jarek Isaacman to be the next NASA administrator. And I kind of want to go around the room and get everybody's thought on that. And, of course, light the chat up about your thoughts on that. I'll start, and then, Julie, I'll come back to you. I think that is a fantastic pick personally. I just think someone who loves space flight engineering and technology and pushing the bounds of what humanity can do in space, Jared is the poster child for that. And I think as a NASA administrator, he'll be in a position to make positive change at NASA and potentially, in my opinion, hopefully push for a little more reusability within the NASA system. Julie, I'm going to come to you first for your opinion on that.
Well, I can tell you that my heart was very happy when I saw that announcement. Of course, there's goods and bads to everything. As far as Jared goes, I've never met him personally, but I can tell you through stories I've heard and people on his cruise that I have met, Jared is a humble man. He is a wise businessman who built his own business, and he's a good leader. So with that being said, I think this is a great time to move from kind of what folks call old space into new space and really leap into that commercial era. And this spaceport that I'm looking at is so ready for that. And I think it's a good thing. And another thing about Jared is he speaks to all launch providers and having diversity. So I look forward to and hope that there is that continued love for diversity so that we can get to Mars together. And yes, giving a hard look at programs that maybe are in need of more love or maybe not being around. Of course, that's a possibility that we have to look at as well. So I have hope. When we're talking politics, of course, it's always sticky, but when there's a ray of sunshine, I'm going to grab onto that.
I agree. I am the eternal optimist, as is Alan, who gifted 10 NASA spaceflight memberships. Thank you guys so much. Thank you again for just hitting the thumbs up button. We appreciate all of you being here, watching our launch today. Again, this is the SiriusXM SXM-9 launch on a Falcon 9 launching from LC-39A. Trevor, I want to come to you for your opinion on the potentially Jared Isaacman becoming the NASA administrator.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's honestly exactly what NASA needs is someone who realizes the power of fixed price contracting and is a huge proponent of seeing other companies do that. I think it's fair to wonder to what extent he's biased from his experience with SpaceX, but so far I think he's shown that he's more of a fan of progress and less of a fan of an individual company. So I don't think it'll be a huge problem, but I think it's going to be fantastic. I personally really hope that he and Congress are able to cancel plans like SLS and Orion to move them to an actually sustainable architecture. And I think the chance is higher now than it ever would have been otherwise. So I think it is fantastic. It would be really interesting, right? Chris put a poll in chat, and like 8% of our viewers is saying that Jared is. They said no to the "Is Jared a good pick?" question. I would love to hear one of their um, justifications.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's obviously entitled to their opinion about that, but we're just going to have to wait and see exactly what happens when after the first of the year and Jared gets in there and makes his change. To Julia's point about old space, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day who's very knowledgeable, been to SpaceX many times, been to Boca Chica, been down to Space Coast, and works on bases. And he said, and I could pull up the conversation, but I'm going to paraphrase him. He said that the thought process of the engineers is still, make a rocket, launch it, make another rocket, launch it. And the prevailing winds of the space launch industry are now make a rocket, bring as much of it back as possible, refurbish it, launch it again. That's what we're seeing on our screen right now from 39A are these reusable rockets. And NASA seems to be, and they do it with their commercial space program. We all understand that. But from an internal perspective, the United States and NASA is lagging behind these companies that are leading the way. As we get closer, go ahead, Trevor.
The one big unknown I think about Jared becoming admin that will be interesting is what happens to Polaris. Because there's absolutely no way he cancels the rest of it. But does this mean that he's suddenly able to give himself permission to go serve as Hubble, which would be phenomenal? Does this mean that he's not going to serve as the commander of whatever Polaris missions are under his, under the segment where he's NASA admin? It'll be interesting, but I think objectively this will be a good thing, and more privatization and commercialization of spaceflight has been tremendously valuable so far.
And I just want to put in there with Polaris, it depends how long he's in that administrative role and when the next mission is scheduled. But he has, like I said, he's a leader and he has a well-trained team in the background on the Polaris program. So maybe he steps aside and doesn't go to space for one mission, and that leadership is handed off for a little while. It's just one of those things we'll have to wait and see, because that's an interesting point to bring up too, Ryan.
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic about how does the NASA administrator go to space or not. Julia, since we've got you, tell us about the weather down there in Florida.
The weather is gorgeous. It is 63 degrees here in Titusville. For native Floridians, it was a little chilly this morning, but the sun is shining. The ground is warming up a bit. As far as clouds go, like I said, we just have happy wispy clouds. I like wispy clouds. They make interesting pictures. There's no wind really, just a little bit of a breeze. That's good launch weather, y'all.
It looks like it. Yep, here we go. 5%, less than 5% primary concern, and we look good all the way across the board for a launch today. We should see and we should expect to see more venting as we get closer to, I guess, 35 minutes. Let's go ahead and pull up the timeline so we can all see what happens when on the Falcon 9. And Trevor, why don't you talk us through this timeline as we get closer to potential chill down and fueling?
Yeah, so as usual, they are coming up on that poll for propellant load, which is when they poll all teams to make sure that all systems look good on the ground, on the vehicle, on the payload, to begin propellant load. And that poll opens at roughly T-minus 38 minutes. It can it generally is a little before that. It's very rough. But then if they go for propellant load at exactly T minus 35 minutes, they will begin loading RP1 on stage 1 alongside liquid oxygen on stages 1 and RP1 on both stages, LOX on just the first stage. That will continue happening for about 10-15 minutes until T minus 20 minutes and 26 seconds, which is when we will see the vent from the strong back. Keep in mind this is 39A, so it happens about 6 seconds earlier than it does for Slick 40 and Slick 4 East. That will then signify that RP1 load on the second stage is complete, and they will start chilling down those lines for liquid oxygen load on the second stage, which will begin at about T minus 16 minutes.
And obviously, we'll see those on the screen when they come through. And we'll know that, we'll talk about the venting. Yeah, there's a close-up shot of the bottom of the rocket, and we'll see what happens when we start to vent there. Julia, you were talking about this booster 1076 launching almost all of the Starlink 6 missions. It also launched several others, getting to its 19th. Today's its 20th flight. Türksat 6A.
This is its 19th.
This is its 19th. Okay, thank you. Türksat 6A, CRS-26, OneWeb. Like you said earlier, this is a storied booster, and we had that question of are we ever going to see 100 launches? I had a question in mind. I'm trying to get my mind back to it. But then we talked about Starship, and we talked about Super Heavy, and I think I saw something the other day where it said that the Starship has the capacity of launching 9 Falcons worth of payload. Is that right, Trevor? I'm going to come back to you, Trevor. 9 Falcon 9s worth of payload?
Yeah, so what? Starship is going to be about 150 metric tons per reusable launch, when Falcon is about 17.5 metric tons per reusable launch at most, we think. So yeah, about 9 launches, somewhere in there. Starship is huge.
Yeah, it is. I've stood as close as you could get to it, and it's still mind-boggling. You lose the scope of how big these vehicles are on the screen. One of the questions that came in about Starship, how many times, this is from Magnum, how many times do you think Super Heavy could be launched before pad refurbishment? Like, they catch the booster, they put it down, they catch the ship, they just simply inspect it, refuel it, and launch it. We're going to get to that point, right, Trevor?
Eventually, if all goes well, that's the plan, but they're very far out from that. I don't see that happening for at least a couple of years, where they're really able to, where the pad design is good enough and booster design is good enough that they don't need any refurbishment. But that said, that is the goal, right? You don't need to inspect a runway or do maintenance to a runway after every airline launch. And
And
the
then you have
airplane
me.
just goes through just quick inspections. So they'll probably get there eventually, but it'll be a ways out. Don't have your expectations set that that'll be a fast thing.
It's
Yeah.
going to be a while. Julia, go ahead.
I'm just chuckling in the background because we have the pad that is in Boca Chica, and we have a pad that is rising again here at 39A, which I expect to be a new iteration of what we see at Starbase. So every time we take a flight of Starship, we learn more, right? And so do the engineers. And those engineers, more than likely, will bring us something different than we see at Starbase, that will further us toward that goal of less pad refurbishment between flights. Because right now, that's just not an option. I think we're a good year away, at least, before we see a land and then inspect and restack and launch again. At least a year.
Yeah, I would agree. It's gonna be a while. Look at what they've done with Falcon 9. They've got it down to, what is it? 14 days is the record. They can turn that thing
13 and a
around.
half.
13 and a half
Right.
days. The goal
But
has always been with Starship to make it a matter of
yeah,
hours.
right. And the pad turnaround's gotten succeedingly faster at Slick
Mhm.
40. That's kind of the workhorse pad, and it takes a lot of abuse. A lot of abuse.
Yeah, yeah. I see some more questions in chat. Thank you guys for throwing those questions in there. Be sure to at NASA Spaceflight get your questions in, and of course all your support. We appreciate everything that you guys do for us, and we can't do this without you. I've said it many times. Science Bob has a question. What is the publicity? The publicly available evidence from SpaceX that shows engineering and manufacturing is far enough along to do 100 Falcon 9 launches per booster. What evidence exists that we can get past the, say, 25 or 40 mark? Trevor?
I mean, anything is possible with enough refurbishment, right? As long as you're actually landing the booster. And they've landed 267 boosters in a row. So, like, theoretically, it definitely is possible. But at some point, right, they probably are going to reach a point where they'd rather just expend the vehicle and build a brand new booster than try to do two major refurbishment. It probably ends up being cheaper. So, I think the evidence is just that if they're able to land it, then within they're definitely able to get there. But if you mean in terms of not doing major refurbishment to get there, we definitely don't have evidence for that, right? We've seen
Mhm.
a booster is almost a quarter of the way there. 67 just flew for its 24th time, and we believe that there's no major refurbishment um, of that booster so far. However, that is definitely not a guarantee. So yeah, we're not 100% sure, but what I think we are 100% sure on is it looks like frost on the vehicle to me.
Really?
Yeah, which is a good sign that we are
Yep.
in prop load.
Yep. Yeah, that close-up shot on the right, you can just see it. Frost and condensation coming up the booster. It's kind of hard to see on the shot on the left, but yes, that whose camera is that? Is that Julia? Is that your camera on the right there?
I'm with you on my phone, and I can't honestly tell you what you're seeing, but I
It's
can tell you that my camera is probably not it because I am 12 miles away, so I'm betting you that
okay.
is either Max or D.
It's Max or D. Yeah, the left one is D. I guess the right one is Max. And then again, they're out there right now with those cameras for you, and the least you can do is give them a thumbs up. Give them a thumbs up, everybody. They're out there in the field with those cameras to bring you this Falcon 9 launch. And since we do see, apparently some condensation on there, we can go through the timeline here again in just a little bit. Now, Julia, Joe has a question for you specifically. Are you ready? That's not the question. That was me. When is the next flyover at the Cape?
Well, Joe, I think this girl may be bundling up for a flight very soon because my gut is telling me there is a lot to share about what's going on at this very exciting spaceport that is on its today, by the way, 87th launch from Cape of the year. So, Joe, stay tuned to our socials because I think you're going to find some interesting things from the air very soon.
If this one launches today, it will be the 100th landing on. They've done 100 landings on a shortfall of gravitas out of 101 events, 101 attempts, and this will be the 95th launch from LC-39A. And yes, Trevor, I'm waiting for that to grow some more in the right-hand camera, but I'm just waiting for it to grow. I'm still seeing an old view because you've gone to the wide shot. Keep your questions coming in. And again, thank you so much. RC, thank you for that. Westy, thank you. We'd love to see you guys in chat. And of course, all the normal names. We appreciate all of you. This is going to be a fun one. When it comes to we've talked about Falcon 9. We've talked about Jared Isaacman, the space news. I guess the big question that everybody's asking is the future of SLS. And Trevor, I'm going to come to you first. And you had already mentioned it in one of your questions, one of your answers about the potential future of SLS. And we talked about old space and new space. Because it's so far along, when do you think they'll say, okay, guys, we'll do the second one. will do the third launch. What do you think? When do you think they're going to cancel that if they do indeed decide to cancel SLS?
Yeah, that's a good question. First, I just want to point out real quick. We did get confirmation from SpaceX that less than 30 minutes until Falcon's launch of SiriusXM. So just as we thought from the visual cues, propellant load is underway and
Nice.
weather is looking good as we want to hear. Going back to your question, Gene, that's a good question. So canceling SLS is definitely not as easy as I think a lot of people think it is or want it to be. It ultimately does require Congress to pay out all of the contractors. And
Mm-hmm.
when this was looked into for Constellation, and this is before I followed spaceflight, so if some of this is slightly incorrect, forgive me. But I believe when they looked at canceling Constellation, it was like billions of dollars of cancellation fees, basically. And the same would be true for SLS with how these contracts are written. So then it just comes down to each personal opinion of, is that worth it? And in my opinion, it definitely is worth it. Like, have all of the engineers and people who work on SLS go work in private space, and they will do 100 times more than what SLS is doing. It's just, I am not a fan of SLS. So it's like an awesome vehicle, but it's a launch at most once a year. That's not sustainable.
Yeah, especially when some companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and others are bringing down that mass to orbit. And speaking of that, Ryan Caton has a poll on his X channel about the future of SLS, when people would think that they would scrap it, and it's very interesting. Over 4,000 people have voted, and 38.9% say that it should be entirely scrapped. Only 13% say it should be kept. Block 1 and 2 scrapped is 28.5, and then Block 2 is 19. So it's obvious people are saying, look, this is costing a lot of money, and it's not cost effective when you look at what other launch providers are doing. NASA needs to up its game in the reusability market, and that money can go toward other projects and making us enter a multiplanetary species, which is the goal, and advance science and space exploration, because that's what all of us nerds want, right?
Right.
That's what we want.
I mean, to throw my head in on the topic, popular or unpopular opinion may it be. I love this rocket because it was the closest I got to seeing a shuttle launch, because the solids were basically the same, right? It's a beautiful rocket, but as government programs go, it's expensive. It's had budget issues, and of course, we're always at the whims of whatever political climate is going on. My opinion is that maybe NASA should be less about launching and rocket hardware, and focus on things like Hubble and the wonderful job JPL does making rovers that share other planets with us, and that money can be guided toward that. But as a resident of somewhere, that particular program greatly supports jobs, that's a hard one to swallow as well, right? Because that will directly impact the economy here. With that being said, other jobs are available at other providers who are up and coming in the area. So it's kind of a hard one.
And speaking of support, thank you, Marcus, for those 5 NASA Spaceflight memberships. We appreciate those at nasaspaceflight.com. And guys, go check out the merch store, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. There's a lot of good stuff out there for you to proudly fly your nerd flag, as I love to do. I want to get to a question about, as we see, as we're watching the Falcon 9 here, we've seen New Glenn go up and down and up again, and we're all anticipating New Glenn's static fire. We don't know when that's going to happen. We're trying to follow it as best we can, but it's over on LC-36, if I'm not mistaken, and there it is. Trevor, When can we see some fire from this rocket? They made a big buildup of it rolling out. At least some people did, and then they keep bringing it up and down for testing.
Yeah, I don't think we exactly know when static fire is going to happen, but it should be relatively soon. Um, let's just all re keep in mind that this is going to be, right, the first static fire of this vehicle. This is the first time that they
Mhm.
have a full stack. So it's fully expected for them to be working through some issues, just like we saw, right, Falcon Heavy work through some issues when it first went vertical. Just like we saw Starship have some issues when it first went vertical, where they probably, just want to check a few things out since they don't want to lose their vehicle. So it'll be soon, hopefully within the next couple of weeks at most. But
Yeah.
that'll be a tremendously exciting event. Like New Glenn, I'm very excited for New Glenn.
A lot of people are, and we need redundancy in the launch market. That's why we support all of the other launch providers. We're talking about even around the world, the launch providers. We love rockets, and more rockets, more better, as our friend Jack says. Julie, another question for you. Pearl wants to know. Pearl is in West Palm Beach. Which direction should she look to see this thing go?
Well, that is a good question. Um, this rocket is going to be going due east and landing on, just read the instructions, out in the Atlantic Ocean. With that being said, Pearl, you are south of us, which means you're going to want to look north and to the east. And I'm betting you have clear skies like I do, so you should have a good view, even though you're considerably farther away than I am. But that's the direction you want to go. Go outside and look north.
How far? That's pretty far away, though, right?
Yeah, but
West Palm
you'll
Beach?
still see it. You'll still
Really?
see it on a clear day. Absolutely. You have to remember, Gene, that I am currently 12 miles from the pad, so I have a great view of the rocket as far as
Hmm.
public perspective goes. But on a clear night, you know what I can see? I can see a reentry burn.
Oh,
And I
wow.
know that a drone ship is 600 kilometers away from me at least. But I can see the reentry burn from this booster, um, from Titusville. So I am betting Pearl will still have a good view of that rocket contrail.
Well, you just answered Keith's question: is how far downrange is? Just read the instructions. So that answers that question. And is that a vent I see up on the, or is that just reflection?
No, that's a vent, but
That's a
uh,
vent.
yeah, right. We will see the main vent of the TE here at T minus 20 minutes and 26
Hmm.
seconds.
Yeah, that's the big one. Everybody shouts for the 20-minute vent. Papa Hawkeye, thank you for that $5 super chat. Could Falcon Heavy or Super Heavy launch Orion? Trevor, that sounds like a question for you.
Um, I mean, in theory, a especially Starship could, but at what point is it easier to?
Well, the question was Falcon. Could Falcon or Falcon Heavy
Well, he said Falcon Heavy or Super Heavy.
or Super Heavy? I know, but
Yeah,
obviously Super Heavy could, but why would it?
yeah. Uh,
There's
no.
your 20-minute vent.
Yep, there's that vent. Falcon Heavy, I mean, it could launch Orion. I don't remember how much delta V or whatnot it could have to
Hmm.
know if it would be enough. But I mean, in theory, yes. But again, no, it's not going to happen. SpaceX would just be pushing hard for changing the architecture to docking to Dragon and low Earth orbit or something like that.
Can I throw a random question in for you?
Absolutely.
So recently we saw something, kind of an Easter egg in a launch photo from SpaceX at Launch Complex 40, and it was an extended fairing for Falcon Heavy. I'm curious, like how many Starlinks could fit in a thing like that? Because we're waiting for Starship, but I'm just throwing out a curiosity question for you.
Didn't
Like,
we talked about that on Friday's Flame Trench about that extended fairing, and I can't remember what Alex said about it. Trevor, do you remember?
Yeah, so we saw that a couple of times. Now at the Cape, they're doing some testing for it. I think we only really expect that to be, it can only be used with Falcon Heavy, and I think we only really expect it on a few uh, NSSL launches, and then maybe for like a Gateway module or two. But I mean, is Gateway even ever going to launch? Probably not. So.
Hmm.
I'm just saying.
Shadowgunner66, thank you for that super chat. Go ahead, Julia.
I was gonna say, I was just saying, if we could put a banana in a payload on a starship, in my mind, we could put Starlinks in that and send a lot more up if we really wanted to. That's all.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's going to Pez dispense those out. We may or may not have seen them already on Starbase Live. I mean, there's a lot going on. Oh, you have his. Okay, great. So I talked about all the people in the field, obviously D and Max, and what you're seeing Wade's feed. Look at that. And we appreciate everybody out there in the field. That is a shot and a half, if I have to say. Goodness. That's pretty incredible. Wade, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. Let's see. Thanks for all the great content. Keep up the great work. Thanks to you all in the field. Yes, we just said that, bringing awesome photos and videos. And again, thank you, Shadowgunner66, for that. Let's see. Okay, Harry, you're going to make me ask this question. Okay. How many standard issues, and this is going to go to Julia first, how many standard issue Santa sleighs fit in a Falcon 9 fairing? Go.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know the size of a standard issue Santa sleigh, and I honestly normally would probably try and break things down into cookies that Santa eats, fitting in there. So I'm really sorry. I don't have an answer for you, but I love the question.
Alex, I need you to calculate that, bring out a spreadsheet. I need to know how many standard issue, not extended version sleighs, okay? Not the rapid fire crew served sleighs, just the standard. Trevor, what do you think?
At least 3.
Three. I would say 1, and he has a magic bag that everything fits in, right? Just 1. But who knows? We'll see. I know Alex is playing it. Oh gosh, now we started it. People are talking about extended sleighs and stubby sleighs and so on. All right, bring up that timeline. The 20-minute vent has turned off. Trevor, what do we expect coming up at T-minus 16 minutes?
Yeah, so at T-minus 16 minutes is when we will start seeing liquid oxygen being loaded onto that second stage. So as I mentioned, when propellant load starts, it starts with only RP1 load on the second stage, and then that's wrapped up now, and then they load the liquid oxygen onto stage 2 as late as possible. And the reason for this is they want the liquid oxygen to be as cold as possible for launch, since colder propellant means that it's denser. Being denser means that you can store more propellant on board, and it also means that your engines are inherently higher performance since there's more mass flowing through them. So it's a huge win for SpaceX to do that, and that's why they load liquid oxygen as late as possible. And on second stage, that means beginning load only 16 minutes before launch.
And we should see that and hear those call outs as we move forward to that T0. We're now coming up under T-minus 15 minutes. There are conversations going on about sea level sleighs and vacuum optimized sleighs. I think we've opened up a new one. There's Shadowgunner66. Thank you again for that. You guys have seen a lot more Falcon 9, and I've watched all of them on NSF like everybody else. You guys have seen a lot more of them live. And one of the things that always gets me is the sound that hits our microphones when it comes through. I've been to Boca Chica. I've heard the rumble one time on Flight 6. I'm looking forward to all the other Starship flights. What is it like being in the field? And I think I'm going to... Should I open up the floor to Max and D, and just because they're always out there in the field with their cameras and I'm going to go to Max. Max, if you're available, can you give me what it feels like to be in the field at a Falcon 9 launch when that sound hits you?
You know, it really depends on where you're watching from. So if you're, for example, over in Titusville for this launch pad and this rocket, the sound will take a little bit to get to you, but once it does, it's like this relentless thunder. Like, it's not necessarily overwhelming, but it is ever present, and you can still feel it even from 12 to 15 miles away. From here at the press site with Falcon 9, Falcon 9 is a very punchy and a very loud rocket. So depending on what direction the wind is blowing, it can sound either very intense or somewhat muffled. But more often than not, Falcon 9 is one of the most intense sounding rockets. I mean, we hear these sound waves bouncing off the VAP and making it squeal. We can feel it in our chest. It makes the roof of the hut vibrate and shake. It's absolutely relentless. And it is I would say it's borderline maybe religious, maybe, perhaps, I don't know. But it's spectacular. There's really nothing like it. So, and Falcon Heavy, on the other hand, is Falcon 9 times 3, and you can imagine how that might transfer into acoustic energy. So, it's incredibly intense.
I look forward to hearing it. I can't wait. Coming up, T-minus 12 minutes. Let's see. One Santa sleigh and his bag is like a TARDIS. Now we're going TARDIS. I did want to get to this question about Stoke Space. I think that was really cool. Stephanie Goldsmith, thank you for your question. Do you think Stoke Space, Trevor, I'm going to come to you on this one. Do you think Stoke Space will take too much business from SpaceX? And a follow-up question, and will the reusable second stage make a massive difference in profits? Just let's take that first question first. As Stoke Space comes out with their ingenious rocket design and reentry design, I can't wait to see it fly. Do you think they're going to start shedding business from SpaceX?
Not for a while. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am very, very excited about Stoke. I mean, you could say I'm stoked about them. I think they're very exciting. And the rocket design that they've come up with is awesome. And like you said, I certainly cannot wait to see it fly. However, I suffer no disillusion that it's going to be launching anytime soon, right? Everything in aerospace takes longer than you think it will. And then from there, even if you launch once, going from a vehicle that can launch one time to a vehicle that can launch, 100 times a year is even more difficult than that first step. So I think I am very optimistic about Stoke's long-term vision. I think they will be successful, but I think it will take them a while to get there. And I don't really see them taking too much business away from SpaceX. I think the launch industry is so large at this point that another player could enter. And for the second part of the question, yeah, I mean, if the launch cost is cheaper for Stoke and they're charging the same amount, yeah, that means more profit. So competition is never a bad thing.
Yeah, Julie, I was going to come to you on the second part of that question. With Stoke having a second stage reusable, recoverable, refurbishable, and relaunchable, where Falcon 9 is not, that's a game changer for medium to heavy lift, right?
Sure is. And I mean, more launch providers, more better. Just because honestly, assured access to space is, key on a lot of levels, not just exploration. So, there's always those what ifs. Can't be perfect all the time, right? And then there's pauses in getting to space. So that's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of competition, and it also sparks innovation. So
Everybody
that's my
loved
take.
your pun, Trevor. Stoked about Stoke. David
It's too
Wiggins definitely
obvious.
is. It's an easy one. Where is Sawyer when you need him? The pun master, or as we like to say, the Punisher. You're not the only one. Guys, thanks for all the support today. We appreciate it, and sharing and hitting that thumbs up button. We do this because we love it just as much as you guys do. We love to see the rockets go up, and we just love to see the landings and everything about it. Let's see. Ebson wants to know the vertical tank on the right, because there's a lot of work, right? The cranes are there. There's a lot of work going on at 39A. The vertical tanks on the right, are they going to remove that? What do you guys think about the tank there on the right, Trevor?
Yeah, so that massive one is the liquid oxygen tank for Starship, and it is properly enormous. I think it's like a 10 or 11 meter diameter, something like that. And there has been a lot of work on it, and based on what they've done to the rest of the work that they did previously, I would not be surprised if we saw it go bye-bye. That said, I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see now that they are taking work on the Starship pad seriously again at the Cape, what they decide to keep and what they get rid of for an upgraded design.
And
I mean,
Julie,
and to be
yeah, go ahead.
fair, yeah, they've given and taken away so many times here that I would color me unsurprised, because we learn from other launches and then we decide maybe we need to change how things are laid out at a pad. Who knows? I mean, that looks like a sturdy thing. It looks like it would be a pain to take down, to be fair, but there must be a reason for moving it or removing it, whatever it is they're doing. But cranes are often a good sign around here that something's going to go away.
Or something's going to go up, like that tower you see on your screen on the right-hand side. We did see some orbital launch mount legs. The previous design, they went up, they came down. So I don't know what the tank is for. And if they take it down, they take it down. They're going to continue to work on that. And it's a good sign to see those cranes over there working at 39A, working on the Starship side. Hopefully things go up. They go up. Rockets go up. We like things that go up. We are T-minus 6 minutes away from potentially this Falcon 9 launching. This is SiriusXM SXM-9 satellite. And there was a question earlier about this replacing 7. I'm not sure about that. We don't know what their plans are. We just know we like to see rockets go up and carry satellites. Let's see. Yeah, we're behind on that. Thank you guys again for all of the support and joining us today for this launch. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for all of the things coming in from NSF. We've got Flame Trench and This Week in Spaceflight, Starbase updates. There's so much content for you. We love that you love what we do, and we do it. And it's so thrilling to be able to bring all of this content to you. Where are we in the timeline coming up on 5 minutes? I know 1 minute's a big one. Can we bring that back up, Jay? If we could bring the timeline back up. And Trevor, when we get under 5 minutes is where we start looking for water deluge systems and the call outs from SpaceX.
Yeah, so at this point we will be seeing propellant load wrap up. So it'll start with RP1 load on stage 1 and then liquid oxygen load shortly thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
And then the key signs will be we'll see that TE pull back by about 1.8 degrees. So not much to start. It's not until launch that it pulls up all the way to past like 45 degrees. And then we'll start seeing some engine chill at the base of the vehicle and for the MVAC, which will be visible through a vent via the inner stage. And then, of course, we'll have that T-minus 1 minute entering of startup, followed by launch director giving their go at T-minus 45 seconds.
So we're coming up to T-minus.
Hi.
We're under 5 minutes. Julia, hi.
Hi. Sorry, forgot I was not muted. And
That's okay. Just saying hello to people. That's the fun thing about it. When I went out to Starbase, somebody walks up. I get out of my truck, and 5 seconds later, somebody's like, "Hey!" And I was like, "Hey!" That's the fun part about it, being part of the community. I love it. Just like Starship Troopers, member for 24 months, Red Team member, thank you very much. Says, can't believe it's been 2 years as a member of Red Team. Thank you, NSF, for all the good memories. Well, thank you, Starship Troopers. We appreciate you being a member and joining us for these launches. We've zoomed in. We're coming up at 4 minutes. and we're expecting the SiriusXM launch here any minute. Let's see. And again, this is booster 1076, so this will be its 19th flight. And if you weren't with us earlier, we did talk about the storied history of this booster, launching all of the Starlink 6 missions, CRS-26, OneWeb 16. I mean, the list goes on and on for this booster. And it also has a very short turnaround, 21 days, 2 hours, 49 minutes, if you're keeping track of those things. And I know people that do. We did talk about the weather. It's second fastest turnaround. That's right, Trevor. Yeah, second fastest turnaround. And had we not set the record last week, it would have been the fastest. Go ahead.
Yeah, not by much though. So the third fastest is like 21 days, 6 hours and 9 minutes, and this is 21 days and 2 hours. So it's only like 4 hours faster. When the one that we saw last week was like an entire week faster than this, which was crazy.
Yeah, it is. They're into such a cadence that things are starting to, for lack of a better term, logjam there at the port. And Julia, we had a photo of several boosters waiting to be broken over, and then they run them back over to the refurbishment facility. Tell us about what's going on at the port there with so many launches coming in to the port with all the vehicles standing there.
That was absolutely crazy, Gene. That is the first time we've seen 3 boosters vertical in port. Thank you, Port Canaveral, for allowing SpaceX to be able to plop them down on the dock while they wait for their turn at the stand. Between them, 34 flights. So I could have taken just one selfie, who knew, and gotten 3 boosters in it.
3 boosters. And the cadence there is pretty incredible. If you're watching the images that come from NSF, you're counting boosters, 1 laying down, 2 standing up, 3 standing up. That port crew has to be working their tails off getting all those boosters out.
Oh, absolutely. And it's Port Canaveral's dream because they're not really using up dock space, are they? Those drone ships are in and out, and that opens it up for cruise ships this time of year.
So we've got another vent there from the Strongback. And I see some daylight growing there. We're down to 1 minute and 35 seconds. Do we have the call outs from SpaceX?
Yeah, we know that stage 1 LOX load is complete and that stage 2 LOX load is complete at this point. So in 20 seconds, the vehicle will enter startup. And that is when the launch, there you can see the water tower is overflowing. That is their sign that it is full and ready to support the water deluge. But at T-1 minute, vehicle will enter startup. So that's when the computers onboard the vehicle take control of the countdown from the ground-based computers. And it's also when the tank's fully pressurized for launch. And then any second now, we should be getting the launch director's verification that they are go for today's launch. Weather certainly looks beautiful and everything looks good.
Well, as everybody loves to say, let's go. We're coming up on 30 seconds, T30 seconds, and we're going to hear some amazing audio after this SiriusXM satellite is lifted off by the Falcon 9. And we should see at the bottom of the rocket, we should see the water deluge system kick up and then a flash of green and those 9 Merlin engines erupt and lift this thing off. Everybody is screaming, let's go, and I'm with you. Let's go. This will be its 19th launch, and I guess its 19th landing. There goes the engines, there goes the Strongback, and there goes Falcon 9. And here in just a second, you're going to get some sweet rocket audio. always love that sound. I can't wait to be there in person with Max and Dee and Julia and Wade and hear those Merlin engines lift that Falcon 9 off the pad. Hopefully Pearl from West Palm Beach can see the rocket launch, as she said earlier in chat. And as we get into this flight, of course, you're going to see some things happen in rapid successions. We'll see the Falcon 9 plume expand as it gets up into the thinner parts of the atmosphere. And then they'll get to MECO, which is main engine cutoff, and then stage separation, and the second stage will light its vacuum-optimized Merlin engine. And thank you guys for your amazing tracking. You're right, Caleb, that is amazing tracking. The work from our photographers in the field is just fantastic. Westy, I agree with you. It doesn't get old. I could watch this all day, every day.
Any second now, we should be seeing those first stage engines shut down. There.
Followed almost immediately by stage separation. There we go. There's stage separation, and the vacuum, the MVAC engine kicks up and roasts the top of that booster. No stubby nozzle on this one, so
Thankfully.
everybody likes to see the full nozzle. I guess, is Max Team stubby nozzle?
Yeah, we don't
There you
give
go.
Max the airtime for it, though.
Yeah, that's
There we
right.
can see those grid fins deploying.
So the fairings that are going to be deployed here, released here in a minute, are 217 and 208, and those are going to be recovered, hopefully, by Bob, the fairing recovery vehicle.
Yeah, and one of those is flying for its fifth time, and the other is flying for its third time.
And speaking of those, there they go. That is a big satellite. 7 tons of SiriusXM. Oh, you can see the RCS thrusters on it. That's cool. Wish they showed that shot again. You can actually see some of the RCS thrusters on the satellite. Are they RCS thrusters or are they something else? It has
Generally
to be
ion
RCS.
thrusters.
Ion thrusters?
Yeah, you want something with super high specific impulse on the satellite. And you don't care if it's low thrust, since you can do a, long burn.
Julia, you've been through a lot of these. So there's another one for the record books for you, right?
Another check mark for the year and for total views. Absolutely. And it was a beautiful launch. I'll be editing a picture for y'all.
Oh, nice. I can't wait. I want to come down there and hang out with you during a launch and just see it for myself. I've been like everybody in chat, like everybody who's watching, I've watched all of these with you on NSF over the years. And being able to see it live is something special. So make a trip to Florida, make a trip to Starbase and watch a launch live. It will change your perspective of what's going on.
Oh, it absolutely will. And I can tell you, I've experienced all spectrums of launches, from way up close to laying in bed, being woken up and wondering what in the world is going on. And I've done that over 250 times now, and it's pretty special.
The booster is orienting itself for a re-entry burn that's coming up here pretty soon. It is landing on Just Read the Instructions, which is bobbing out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And hopefully we'll be able to hear that, potentially, maybe not. And the second stage continues to power itself to its orbit for deployment. Now, when the booster gets back into the thicker part of the atmosphere, it uses those grid fins, everybody's favorite word, hypersonic. Uses those grid fins. But first, Trevor, talk us through the entry burn. Why does Falcon 9 have to have an entry burn when we know Starship doesn't?
Yeah, so Falcon is traveling much faster at before its entry burn than Starship is, or Super Heavy is, even without one. One thing they learned with Falcon that they wanted to and did implement with Starship was eliminating the need for propellant used on the entry burn. So they optimized the flight profile so that they could basically have the booster stage at fairly low velocity um, so that it has less stress on it. And that's how they're able to get away without having an entry burn. But the entry burn on Falcon will be coming up very soon, and that will be 3 engines. So you can see a single engine, and then now there's all 3. And now this will continue running for like 20-ish seconds or so. And that will be the entry burn. And you can see that speed at the bottom left corner rapidly decreasing. They generally cut off about 2,500 kilometers per hour of velocity from the vehicle. It looks like maybe even a bit more today. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. It is a notable difference, and it's cool that they were able to eliminate it.
124th Falcon launch of the year. So their goal was 136. Trevor, do you think they're going to hit that being December 5th?
Yeah, it should be pretty easy for them to hit their 136 Falcon launch goal. I say pretty easy in quotes. It's obviously a tremendous amount of work from the SpaceX team, but based on the insane November that we saw, where SpaceX launched 17 times, 16 Falcon, 1 Starship, they only need to launch 15 times this month. So I'm pretty confident that they will be hitting that 140 total launch number for Starship, 136 Falcon.
I love seeing the clouds as the booster is screaming its way through. 7 kilometers up. I've jumped out of many airplanes, and you don't get to jump in clouds. So it's nice to see when the booster's coming back and it rips through those clouds at over what is that? That's a click a second, click an hour. I can't see it. It's covered up by our.
That's kilometers an hour right there.
Yeah, kilometers an hour. So here we go. We're going to dive through the clouds, and then the booster's going to, you'll see that there's the landing burn. And the grid fins are doing their job to bring it down on just read the instructions. What an amazing, just seamless view.
Yeah, no kidding.
There go the landing legs. And that looks like to be another successful touchdown.
Yeah, that
With
is
no audio,
the
unfortunately.
100th successful landing on just read the instructions, and the 380th successful landing of a Falcon 9 booster, and the 39th consecutive Falcon booster in a row.
It was kind of neat to see the drone ship water deluge system. I haven't seen many of those shots where they hose the ship down and then it evaporates as the rocket comes in for landing, and then they keep hosing it down from the sides. That was pretty cool to see. And obviously we're looking at the second stage. What a beautiful shot of Earth. Look at that. Just amazing. And we're in the coast phase, or are they gonna burn it again? I don't know what the profile is for this launch.
Yeah, so like with all geostationary transfer orbit missions, there will be an additional launch, an additional burn. Yeah, I believe that burn is at about T plus 26 minutes, and then the burn is a little under a minute long. And then they deploy the payload just over 31 minutes, almost 32 minutes after launch.
And while this thing coasts to its second burn, we're going to be working on some launch replays for you. And then, of course, this will deploy its payload. I don't know if we're going to stay on that long, but we will. But I want to thank some folks for all of their support, all the folks that hit that thumbs up button. You guys are amazing. You're gifting these memberships to nasaspaceflight.com. Thank you so much. Just crazy amount of support. Thank you guys for everything that you do, and everybody in chat. I love when you guys are talking to us, and I got smart last time. Somebody taught me, their name is D, how to actually bring up the chat and be able to watch as it goes by real time, and really, really cool. seeing everybody and what they're saying and some of those questions. So as we wait for those replays to come back, Trevor, have you been to a launch live in Florida?
In Florida, no. I went down for some and they all got delayed. But I have seen a transporter mission from Vandy, and then I barely saw Flight 4, and then I saw another launch from Vandy actually the other day, the NROL launch. But that was from like a couple hundred miles away. So
I can't wait to get down there. My first live rocket launch was Flight 6 of Starship. And of course, we've got a potential date early January for Flight 7 with the first Block 2 ship. It's going to still be on a Block 1 booster. But if you're not watching Starbase Live and seeing all of the potential parts moving around for some cool vehicles that are coming up, be sure to do that. Just hang out and just watch Starbase Live. Be sure to catch Starbase updates this week in spaceflight, and of course all the other content from NSF when it comes out. Let's see. More Red Team memberships. Thank you. Hang on. Who is that? I got to see who that is. Gary, thank you so much for those. And Spaceflight Simulator, we couldn't do this without you and your gift of those memberships. And I say this all the time, but if you are a recipient of one of those memberships, be sure to say thanks. It's very generous of them to give those memberships to you guys. And if you're a recipient of one of those, be sure to say thanks in the chat to those folks. Do we have the... Yes, we definitely do. Max says we need to get Gene and Trevor and EJ down there. I would... Look, everybody jump in my truck. I'll pick you guys up on the way. Let's go. Let's get a done road trip for a launch. Max, absolutely agree with you. Oh, that's a great question. Trevor, you may or may not know this one. Teacher asks, how many Gs do you think are pulled on a reentry burn? Even though it's the booster and nobody's going to be riding the booster, it's got to pull some Gs. How do you think that compares to riding a Dragon back?
yeah, it's much lower. Much higher. Right, on Dragon, they know that their payloads are humans, and humans are terrible with Gs.
Right. We're squishy.
So they intentionally design the entry profile to be, so that humans can handle it fairly easily. When they don't do that with booster, I believe Falcon is on the order of like 6 Gs during its entry burn, whereas like Starship, I believe, is like up to 20 Gs during its landing burn. So yeah, it's definitely not decelerating as quickly as Super Heavy does, but it's still a pretty rapid deceleration.
Kevin wants to know when they started building the Super Heavy tower, and it's been there for a good while. The Starship tower at 39A has been there for 2 years, at least. They started to build it. They put the OLM legs in, then they cut them down, and all work ceased. Trevor, do you have a number on that? I swear it's been like 2 years.
I don't think it's been quite 2 years. I bet it's closer to like 1 that it's been up there, but I don't know for sure.
Let's see. How do we know how long after landing Falcon 9's grid fins fold down? Supersonic retro propulsion, which is the greatest name on YouTube. Supersonic retro propulsion asks that question. When they come back to the port, are they still extended?
No, they fold them
They do
down.
retract. We don't know
Yeah.
how long that takes when they do that.
Correct.
Interesting. One more question. Let's see if I can find another question here. There's the strong back retracted, and there's on your right hand the
Going back up.
orbital. Yeah. Oh, it is?
Yep. The throwback position is substantially lower than it is now.
And that's part of our rapid reuse and turnaround of our pads here at Cape Canaveral. That TE going back up sooner than later means that they can start safing the pad and getting it ready for the next launch.
So they raise it up.
Next launch, according to Alex, is December 12th.
Yep.
from this pad. So
It is. Aravel says, crazy to think how many of us will be listening to tunes from this satellite in the next few months. That's actually true. And one of the things that always amazes me is we put satellites up there. We don't even think about it. Like you jump in your car and you're like, I need to go to this location. You're using the technology that was launched on a rocket. And we've become kind of numb to it, right? That we use these technologies. We talk about direct to cell, the SOS from our smartphones, going to the satellites, early GPS, modern GPS. It's crazy to think how reliant we've become as a people on those chunks of metal and aluminum and fuel floating around above our heads that we can't see. It's really amazing when you think about that we've become so dependent on that. When was the last time you opened up a printed map rather than using a GPS that's flying above your head at low Earth orbit?
Fun fact, you still do need paper maps, just in case of emergencies like hurricanes and evacuation.
I agree.
So, folks, please do not lose your map skills because paper maps are a whole different ballgame if you've never used one. I love my GPS, but by the way, Google cars cannot go everywhere to do that mapping for you. So, just a heads up, paper is also good.
No, I agree. That's a great point. You can't rely on technology all the time. I absolutely agree. There's just like, you've got a first aid kit in your car, put a map in the car, just in case. Let's see. Wow. Thank you guys. We appreciate all the Red Team memberships being gifted. You guys are amazing. And the thumbs ups are really awesome. There's a view from, there's the boosters we were talking about. There's one standing there and I can't remember. Trevor, help me out here.
this is Fleet Cam.
Yeah. And is that the
there's
Dragon?
one
That's the
booster.
Dragon recovery ship.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's Shannon or Megan. And then you can see Jacqueline on the left, Blue Origin's
Oh yeah.
recovery
Well,
vessel.
We're waiting to see what happens with that one. Their booster is called So You're Telling Me There's a Chance. We'll see if that one lands on there. And Alex says that's booster 1083 that we're looking at on the stand there. No, Jesme 2006. No, we're not going to talk about Kessler syndrome again. We did that on the Flame Trench ad nauseum. Go back and watch that one. Tune in tomorrow to the Flame Trench. Maybe they'll talk about it. I know they're going to talk about Jared's nomination. They're definitely going to talk about that. I know EJ's warming up to talk about that one, aren't you, EJ? Don't forget that to head out to shop.nasaspaceflight.com, pick up all of the NSF merch. You won't regret it. Show your support for us, and if you see anybody from NSF, just say hi. We'd love to talk to everybody. It is a ton of fun. EJ's laughing at me right now. I know you're getting. Go ahead, Julia.
I was going to say, and fun fact, us as crew have access to different merchandise as well on our shop. And if you are out in the field and I say I am in Titusville, more often than not, I am wearing an NSF crew sweatshirt like I am today. So feel free to say hi. And chances are I'll probably forget I'm on mute and say hi to everybody, just like I did earlier today.
There was one of the replays of the launch. Here comes another one. A tighter shot. Nice. It's so amazing. It's just something about rocket launches. I can't put it into words. Here's Wade's shot. Oh, look at that. Wait, this is Julia? Oh, this is Julia's replay. Awesome.
I told you can get a great view from 12 miles away.
That's amazing. Look at you tracking across the water there. That's awesome. Yeah, you guys go and watch that video of where to watch a launch in Florida from NSF. You can search it and find it. But there's a lot of great spots you can just kind of zip into. My wife and I were going down for a cruise, and they lined the main road there. It was right before one of the SLS not launches. Great work. You said 12 miles, Julia? Looks
As
like
the
you're right
crow
next to it, man.
flies. You bet.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Really nice view. Deborah, Reese, I agree with you. It is an amazing view. This must be Wade's. Look at that. Peter, we appreciate you being a launch director for 46 months. Thank you so much for that support. And yes, that is a nice view from 12 miles away. Julie did an amazing job. Look at this track from Wade. Nice. Great track. About Time Brewing, exactly. It is a great track. The people we have in the field with their cameras are just incredible. D, Max, Wade, Julia, everybody else who gets out there. Really good stuff. So guys, we've got about 15 minutes until we, during this coast phase, we are going to stay with it for deployment. So just, hang with us. If you have more questions at NASA Spaceflight in the chat, we'd love to get to them. We can talk about all things spaceflight. We've already talked some of the things that happened this week in spaceflight in the news. But of course, I know where you're going to go be tomorrow to get your news from this week in spaceflight. We talked about Jared's nomination, and we talked a little bit about the 39A work that's going on with Starship. We've been watching Starbase Live and seeing all the parts that are going through there, and waiting for more news on Flight 7 with the Block 2 ship and the Block 1 booster, which way with 33 and 13. I'm probably wrong on that. But we are just maybe 10 or 15 minutes away from the second burn and then the deployment. The guy who did the countdown on SpaceX stream sounds like Max. Oh, somebody asked earlier about when did Mike Rowe join NSF. I'm assuming they're talking about me. I'm not Mike Rowe. In fact, that's a running joke that my nickname is not Mike Rowe. My name is Gene. I'm a space nerd like all of you guys. Let's see. Johns wants to ask a newbie question. At what point in the flight does the stage 2 get to expose the foil payload? Expose the foil payload just seen shortly after launch. So the foil is over. Trevor, you can actually chime in on this one. The Mylar foil they put over the MVAC engine. What purpose does that serve? It's not protecting the engine, is it?
Yeah, it's protecting it for something. There we can actually just see that they must be over a ground station since they picked up speed and altitude live telemetry again. Yeah, it's for protection. I'm not entirely sure what purpose it serves, if I'm being honest, but there you can it looks like perhaps the propellant settling thrusters are firing. That would be a bit early, but I can't quite tell.
And that's what you're talking about. The Mylar cover over that. We see it flex and move, and it's protecting the top of the engine. And we're coming up on the second and the first engine relight. The MVAC engine will relight, placing the satellite in its exact geostationary transfer orbit.
Yeah, and there's engine chill. We should be seeing the propellant settling thrusters pretty shortly.
EJ, what? You're gonna have to reach out to me. Why not? Was he talking about the road trip? I'm down. Let's go. Harsh Patel, thank you so much for being a Pad Rat member as we wait for this thing to light up. Thank you very much for that support. We got a lot of thumbs up today. We really like that. Westy, yeah. I'm just going through it. Why isn't your nickname Micro? Oh. Okay. There comes the engine relight. Boom. Do we know how long this burn is?
Yeah, it's a little under a minute. So unlike
Little
on
under a minute.
Starlink missions where right, the second burn is like a second, this one is substantially longer, lasting about a minute because it's going to raise that apogee up to about 38,000 kilometers somewhere in there. And then keeping its perigee about the same, and that's when the satellite will naturally start raising its perigee until it is in its correct geo slot.
So EJ in the back channel brought up a great point about the Mylar, and that's right. It's a thermal protection wrap for the machinery inside. Thank you, EJ, for that. Sunlight on that is bad. Sunlight heats, space cold. And then to answer the question, why the not Micro? So I was actually in a studio in LA and I was reading for Ice Road Truckers, the show that they used to do. And basically they say if the announcer gets sick, they have somebody come in that sounds like them, they do the thing. So I was reading it and the producer was just riding me like a bull. I mean, he was just like, that's not how Mike does it. Mike does it differently. Speed it up, slow it down, deeper, lighter, blah, blah. And he was just on and on and on. And finally he goes, man, you're not Mike Rowe. And I said, no, I'm not Mike Rowe. And that became my nickname, not Mike Rowe. So that's where that came from. It's fun. Yeah, Ice Road Truckers, exactly. So we've got SECO 2 that just happened, and now we should see deployment of that satellite.
We have confirmation of nominal orbital insertion. So now in a couple of minutes, we will see that payload be deployed. And then that will be it, right? There is no third burn of the second stage on today's mission. It will just undergo what's known as a pacification, which is when they start venting everything down to make sure that there are no like loaded COPVs or anything that could damage, could blow up or something like that. So they'll pacify the stage, and then that will be it.
When we see that deploy on the left side of your screen there, you can see all the cranes and everything at LC-39A, and they're talking about the Starship work has resumed. We're assuming that they're building out 39A to be like Pad B at Starbase. And on the right-hand side of your screen, any minute now, you're going to see the deployment of that it's so hard for me to say, SXM-9 SiriusXM satellite. What a gorgeous shot. Look at that. Who does not want to go and see that? That is just, see it for themselves. It's crazy. It's so beautiful. And someone just said in chat, space is empty. Space is space. It's full, but one of the things that people say is that space is black, it's dark. And I'm going to say this, and maybe people in chat are going to beat me up about it, but it's actually full of light. The only time space is actually dark is when you're in the shadow of another object. Because light from a billion stars is reaching us all the time. And when you're in space, and I would love to see this for myself, but space is actually full of light. It's only when you're in the shadow of an object do you get actual darkness. Very, very different concept, I know, but that's how I see it. Also, guys, be sure to, when we're talking about Starship and the work on 39A, you can obviously jump into Space Coast Live. It's live 24/7. You can see that work going on for yourself. And if you want to see what's going on at Starbase, you can actually jump in Starbase Live and also McGregor Live when they're doing the engine testing in McGregor, Texas. They are taking their time. What was it? I thought it was 31 minutes, 32 minutes. So any minute now we should see that deploy. Question for you guys. All right, Rohit, what do you got? Will there be a 24-hour live feed on board Starship when the first humans go to Mars? You know, I sure hope so. I sure hope that would be amazing if we could get an NSF 24 live stream camera on the first Starship to Mars. I'm down with that. Trevor, what do you think? Let's do that.
I think it would be hard. I do not think the astronauts would want to be seen 24/7. So for their privacy, I'm going to say no.
Well, well, maybe. Yeah. I want to be, oh gosh, I want to be on a Starship to Mars, to be honest with you. I just, you know, I would be. But I mean, remember, I don't know that it would actually be 24/7 because as soon as you leave Earth's sphere of influence, you go into Martian time, and it's 26 hours and change, I think. And then you have the delays to deal about, to worry about. So even if you had a 24/7 calling it a 24/7 camera, you would have anywhere between a 4 and a 20-minute delay one way. So you would be seeing things that happened in the past. That's a good point. I love reading the chat. I just get kind of stuck reading the chat sometimes as we're waiting for the SiriusXM satellite to deploy.
Yeah, at the bottom right, you can see the stage 2 telemetry. Speed is decreasing as the altitude is increasing, just like how, right, when you're going up a hill, if you're not like pedaling on your bike or whatever, right, you're going to start slowing down. And then once they're at apogee and start coming back downhill, that speed will start increasing again with the altitude decreasing. So
I want them to go back to the shot of there you go. Look at the thrusters at the top. That's kind of cool. And they've got that thing taped up. Man. Deploy already. All right, Keith, how many uncrewed starships to Mars before the first crewed mission? I have my thoughts. Trevor, what do you think?
a lot.
That's scientific. That's a technical term, right?
Yeah.
A lot.
You
I
know,
agree.
I know,
I think it's going to be hundreds. I think it'll be 150 maybe.
yeah, Elon has talked about sending crew to Mars in 2028, which I mean, I love the ambition, but like, right, that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to take they have to nail a lot. There's so many milestones between now and a crewed Starship launch that they have to hit. I mean, you know, let's focus on the near term. Are we going to get to a crewed Starship? Yeah. There goes the deployment of SiriusXM. Are we going to get to a point where we have a crewed Starship? Absolutely. I know we're going to get there. Is it going to be soon? No. So I say let's focus on the near term. Let's get in orbit refueling nailed. Let's figure that out. Let's catch some ships and boosters. That kind of stuff. The SpaceX has so much to do before we get to a crewed Starship mission. Trevor, you're going to say something?
Nope.
The answer is always yes, Trevor. Guys, thank you so much for the support. That was a fun mission. I like doing Falcon 9 missions. You know, SiriusXM is up there in space, so we'll be listening to them if you still listen to the radio. Thank you guys so much for all the support today and the great questions. We appreciate it. I want to thank you, Trevor and Julia, for co-hosting today. You guys are awesome. Your insight is invaluable to us space nerds, so thank you so much.
I was
Max?
happy to be here. Absolutely.
Max, D, Julia, Wade out there in the field with those amazing cameras and the tracking shots. Someday I might learn how to do that. You need Julia teach me how to do that. Max, D, in fact, don't teach me how to do that. I just leave it up to you guys. And I have D's picture from Flight 6 sitting in front of me here on the desk. It's amazing. Jay Keegan, the man behind the scenes. He's behind the green curtain, pulling all of the strings and making it possible for us to do what we do here. We couldn't do all the techie stuff without Jay. And of course, all the members, thank you so much. I say it all the time, and I might be repetitive. Sorry, not sorry. We can't do what we do without you. So thank you for everything that you do. The thumbs up, the super chats, the great questions, the store messages, everything. We love you guys. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, I've been your host. I'm Gene Rowley. Remember, guys, dream big and keep your eyes on the stars. Check out this beautiful slow-mo from 1DWise. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Echo down to nominal.
Flight downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. Off. It's orange! 145!
Oh my god!
Decollage. What do you think? Put that in the big bag, you know.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.